Hello guys, Brandon here. Today Tesla had its annual shareholders meeting, which the first part is usually boring and formulaic, but then Elon starts talking and whenever he says stuff about the future and hints at things, it's always interesting. So there were a few interesting tidbits, I would say, that he listed. He talked for about half an hour. The video is available on Tesla's website at ir.teslamotors.com. And then if you click under, I think it's actually called a webcast or podcast or something, they always, the audio files to the quarterly reports are usually there, but this one is actually a video. So anyway, if you're interested, take a look, but I'm going to be summarizing it now, again, because there's some interesting stuff. So he started out talking about just overall what Tesla's been doing this year, 2017, and basically this has been a transition year for Tesla to become a fully integrated energy company, meaning they sell the components to produce energy, to store the energy, and to use the energy, meaning the cars. So part of that was the acquisition of Solar City, and all three of those fronts are advancing. Solar Roof, he talked about specifically. Their goal was to create a roof that's better looking than most roofs, and he noted that most roofs don't look very good. Also longer life, including so much so that he wanted to guarantee the life of the roof. Their actuary said that's kind of hard to do to infinity, and he said, okay, well, to infinity or if the house falls apart, whichever comes first. And then he also talked about affordability, and he considers it affordable as a combined energy production and roof solution. And then with time, as the economies of scale of production as well as installation improve, the prices will come down for that. And also it's very region dependent, based on net metering situation, taxes, property taxes, all that kind of stuff. So all that to say, it's more expensive in some areas than it is in others. I also did mention that flat panel solar cells definitely still have a role to play, specifically in industrial situations or buildings, actually, because their roofs tend to be flat and you can't see up there anyway, so there's no use putting extra money and effort into something that looks good. And also some residential houses actually have flat roofs. There's a couple of those around here, which is really surprising because they have to be able to support a lot of snow. Anyway, that's a side issue. And then also people that, like me, actually, who just had their roofs redone. Mine was done 2 years ago. You don't want to tear that off and put in a new roof. That makes no sense when you've got another 30 years on your roof. So obviously flat panel solar flat solar panels would still have a function for that. All right, moving on. You mentioned Power Pack. They've done some pretty big systems in Southern California. That one, I believe, is 80 megawatts. Samoa Island is entirely powered by Tesla's energy, solar, and battery storage. And then Kauai has the capability to supply 20% of their peak demand with their solar and storage system. So. All right. Also, he showed some demonstrations that the Tesla app now integrates your power system as well. So it tells you if you have the systems like a Powerwall or or solar panels. It'll tell you how much power you're getting, which way it's going, how much you're storing, what's coming from the grid, blah blah blah, all that stuff. So I don't see any of those features on my app. He says it's live already. So I guess that system knows if you have it or not. Anyway, so that's there. Let's see, and then and then overall he mentioned a couple categories of their business, such as the stores. They estimate in the U.S. they'd like to have one store per 500,000 people, so that's like, well, I think he said 600 something stores in the U.S. That would be their goal. I don't know how many they have now. And then more in other countries. Service, they're getting faster, it's becoming more efficient, but they're planning on expanding that in physical locations where they're able, and then with the Tesla Ranger system in states where they're not able or not allowed to have facilities. Supercharger, the goal is to double the number of superchargers by the end of this year. The largest supercharger areas, he said they will be including adding amenities, again, to make the Tesla long distance travel experience one that's very enjoyable. So that's really cool. I would love to visit one of those stations. And they will continually be improving power and speed. He said next year they'll probably increase it by another 50%, possibly doubling. I'd say probably 50% if they actually get to the double at point by end of this year. And that'll be really cool. That's a relief for a lot of current owners, with so many Teslas probably coming online by end of year. Autopilot, the transition from using Mobileye components to relying entirely on Tesla Vision is almost complete. And he said mid this year, he said probably next week, but who knows. That update will essentially bring them up to parity with the hardware 2 set, with what they had with the Mobileye system. So they've had to start from ground zero and redevelop all of that in order to bring hardware 2 up to parity. So I guess that will occur now or this month, and then he said improvements will rapidly occur after that. So I don't know why it would be so rapid after that. Maybe the system has to be created as a whole, and then it can start benefiting from machine learning and that kind of stuff. Maybe that's what he meant, and the rate of progress will increase. I don't know. I'm hoping they can also start to focus on hardware 1 and improving those capabilities. Somebody had tweeted about that a while back, and somebody tweeted and saying they felt like hardware 1 has been forgotten, and then somebody else replied to that and said, well, they've got to bring hardware 2 up to parity, and then they can improve both. And Elon retweeted that and basically agreed. So, there's that. All right, we're on to the next page. All right, talked a lot about the Gigafactory. They're going to have the lowest cost per kilowatt hour. Of course, they never actually say what that is. And the highest energy density of any other place. And they're also going to be making more battery capacity than the rest of the world combined. He still says that. So there it is. Also, he did say that the Gigafactory will be producing drivetrains as well as the batteries. So it'll be producing batteries for all the current cars and the immediate future cars. But when he was talking about Model Y, which I'll get to, he said there's no more space in the Fremont factory, so the only other place to make the drivetrains is at the Gigafactory. So Model Y drivetrains will be made at the Gigafactory, but then Model Y will also have its own factory, again, because they're running out of room in Fremont. All right, so then he switched to semi. This was so here's some of the tidbits here. Okay, so there's going to be they're going to showcase it with a working prototype at the end of September. I think I'm supposed to get an invitation to their next event, so I think I might be able to go there, although I haven't gotten an invitation. I really hope I can, though. It sounds awesome. So here's what I didn't know. They've already been showing it to major transportation or I don't know what you call them, freight companies, trucking companies. And so they've been involved, those large companies have been involved with designing the features of the truck itself. So they already know what it's going to look like and what it's going to be capable of and stuff, because they were telling Tesla what features they wanted. And Musk basically said that these companies like it, and their question is basically, when can I buy it and how many can I buy? And he says they'll probably be able to scale it up in about 2 years. So that's pretty far off. But that's pretty crazy. I mean, whatever the solution is, and it's going to be very interesting to learn what it is. Yeah, that's pretty crazy to have that kind of, just to penetrate into that market in such a way. And he didn't mention what companies those were. He says they're major, and he says they would be the companies that would be purchasing the most of them. So, sounds like they might be demand constrained, or supply constrained for that process as well. So then he switched to the Model Y, and there's one more thing I want to say about the Semi, but we'll get to that. So Model Y, so he released a silhouette of it, just like they did of the Semi. So you'll probably see that around. So Model Y is going to be a new platform, and he sort of expanded on the reasons for this, and he said designing the Model X from or on top, using the Model S platform. In other words, designing an SUV based on a sedan platform was probably a mistake. So design a sedan the way a sedan should be designed. Design an SUV the way an SUV should be designed. Just basically, and don't try to get fancy and double up on those two things, because it just makes things more complicated. So as a result of that, originally they thought they were going to use the 3 as a template for Model Y, but he wants to get rid of that, and he wants to redo it, and for a number of reasons. One, to simplify components, so he wants to get rid of the 12-volt system, which will decrease wiring and also unify electronics and make it, there's fewer things to produce and make it simpler. And adding on to that, in general, he wants to actually simplify the supply chain, not just in the number of components, but also like regionally, so they're not dependent on so many parts of the globe for their car, for them to actually produce the car. So if anything goes wrong anywhere in the world with any one of their suppliers, they have a problem, and they don't want to inherit those problems, because the likelihood of something going wrong in the world somewhere is quite high. So he wants to simplify the supply chain, and as a part of that is also actually designing a new factory specifically for the Model Y. And with those things, he thinks that he can reduce the amount of CapEx needed for that by 50% compared to what they spent for Model 3. And that's probably pretty true, because Model 3 is being squeezed into the Fremont factory for production, which they're running out of room. And the battery's being made at the Gigafactory, and so it's, there's already regional separation and stuff like that. So it sounds like he thinks he can squeeze out some more economies of efficiency, or whatever the phrase would be, by consolidating regions of origin and stuff like that. And their goal is 2019 to have these cars on the roads. Of course, that's Tesla time. That we can take that a lot more seriously if Model 3 ends up on the road this summer in substantial numbers. If he actually gets to that goal and follows through on that, unlike every other Tesla timetable previously, then I think they've probably figured out how to arrive on time, and they might be able to do that for Model Y as well. Sounds like they've been working on Model Y a bit more than we realize. And here's the new thing that was very interesting. He sort of said kind of coyly that there's some other stuff that he's not sharing, and then the audience kind of cheered him on, and he was like, it'd be a good idea if you can. It'd be a really good idea to attend the Tesla Semi unveiling event. There might be some other stuff. That's basically what he said. So maybe they're going to have a working Model Y prototype. Let's see, what year is it? 2017? Yeah, that'd be interesting. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. All right, moving on to Model 3, regarding the config. So I already did a video about what I thought the 100, or the 100, well, a little bit less than 100 configurable options for the Model 3. I described what I thought those options would be, and you guys had some great comments on that. So we were probably somewhere in the middle. The truth was probably somewhere in the middle in that dialogue. But on the whole, I forget exactly what I said, but I think I was on the right line, because, well, one of the things I did say is I thought there was only going to be one battery option at release, and it sounds like that's true, because Elon said, or Musk said, when the configurator first comes out, which is probably at the end of July, that's what he said. When it comes out, probably the only options that you're going to have to decide are what color and what wheel size. So, and I can't remember if I thought wheel size was going to be a thing. I thought wheel color. I thought they were going to have different wheel colors. But, so you're not going to be, and he didn't even mention like the glass roof, which is kind of weird. So pretty minimal configurable options at first. And he said that's the opposite of what they did with the X, where they loaded all these complex things all in their first version of the vehicle, when they really should have waited for some of that fancy stuff in the second or third iteration. And with the Model 3, he explained specifically that like they were going to at first release the all-wheel drive versions, dual motors, first, but then they realized, wait a minute, that's going to, if there's two motors, that's going to double the possibility of something going wrong. That they would have to fix, and then that would slow the ramp up. So they want to go super basic and ramp up basic and then add complexity, which, I mean, I guess makes sense, except, well, actually it solves another problem of so many people ordering all at once, because a number of people are going to wait for the options that they want, I think. And he thinks the all-wheel drive will probably be early next year now, is what he's saying. And it's actually more complex than you might think, because it's not just two motors. Apparently they're optimized differently. So one is optimized for freeway driving and highest efficiency there, and the other one is optimized for like city driving and stuff. So that you can get the best of both worlds. But that means that you increase the complexity because they're actually kind of different motors. I don't know if they're physically different motors. I don't know what he meant by optimizing, but all that to say, it's a complexity issue. What else? Oh, he said, and so once they work out any kinks that might be there with the initial basic options, then they'll introduce more options into the configurator, and they'll also provide a timeline of when things are probably going to come online. But that won't be available initially. And then he mentioned future factories. He said they're considering 3 locations right now, but they're really just going to sit on that until the timing is right. So, don't know anything about that. Oh, here's something interesting. So then he moved to, they took in a number of Twitter questions, and I think he took some on Instagram as well, maybe. So he went through about 20 selected Twitter questions. One of them was about battery upgrades. He said it's already offered. Has anybody heard of that? I haven't heard of that. He said there are some limitations as to what you can upgrade to, and that's actually based on weight. Which, this is interesting. Actually, on the tour last weekend, our tour guide said that all the batteries, every size, is 1,200 pounds. And I've gotten different answers about this from different people. That was something that the salesman in Chicago, or what do they call them? Ownership consultants. He said that they were all the same size, and that kind of stuff. And then I talked to the Tesla Ranger, who actually works on the cars, And he said, no, they don't put, they are actually lighter. They don't put dummy weight, in the lighter ones. And if you think about it, they can't be all the same, because the 100D, or the 100 kilowatt hour battery, was made after all these other versions. So, it's got more density, it's been restructured, so there's no way they could make it exactly the same, and they're not going to retrofit the other ones to change their weight. So anyway, all that to say, he said that you can't take like a really low power the lowest Tesla battery cannot be upgraded to the highest Tesla battery. I don't know how many steps you can go, but so you can't take like a 40 or a 60 and put 100 into it. So that makes sense. But it's interesting, now they're getting rid of the 90, so mine is a 70, so my only option would be, I guess there's used 85 kilowatt hour batteries, which, that would be nice. But if there's no 90, well, maybe there's used 90s, I guess. But I wonder if the 100 pack would fit in my car or not. That would be interesting. So that's one of the two things that I wish I had on my vehicle. One is fully autonomous hardware 2, and a bigger battery. I think for the sedan, I don't think I need a 100, but it definitely would have been nice to have even 75, but definitely 85 for the long trips would be helpful. So anyway, he said all Teslas can be upgraded, and they will offer it. Initially, he said they're already offering it, so I don't know what that means, but either way, he did say, if that's not true, he did say they will be offering it. He also mentioned the certified pre-owned. They're not calling them CPOs anymore. They're now called used, because that term is meaningless. They're just used cars, and they're paying more attention and bringing more of these onto their website, making more of them available. And that was actually reflected in an article on Electric today. I guess there were some models under $40,000, which is important, because that can get close to the price of a Model 3. So if you're in that price range, but you'd really rather have something larger than the Model 3, and the Model 3 is definitely smaller. It's narrower, and so if you have 5 people, would be probably not very comfortable on a long trip in the Model 3. So anyway, that might actually help some people switch to a Model S instead of a Model 3, as more of their anti-selling the Model 3 thing. So anyway, that's there. He also mentioned the auto emergency braking algorithms and software, that they're continually improving that, and he did mention that it does apply, there's some role with it with pedestrians and cyclists. So and there is that video that Cayman Auto did, I think last year sometime, where it actually showed a pedestrian icon. So I guess that's real. Oh yeah, and then he also mentioned some other safety features. There was a hidden features video recently by like Tesla, where they mentioned in some, I think, European countries, the hood actually, if it detects a front pedestrian collision, it pops up a little bit to give a little more spring to the hood if a pedestrian like slams onto the hood. Musk didn't mention that, but he did mention that because there's no engine block underneath the hood of a Model S, and the hood is a relatively thin piece of metal, I believe it's aluminum, which is why you have to like close it a certain way. Because of that, if a pedestrian impacts against that, there's a lot more give to soft body parts, or knocking your noggin in that area. So that was interesting. I hadn't really thought about that before. Then he switched to the audio component. Somebody asked about audio, I don't know, something, and he started talking about the software codecs in the Model S and X, and saying that he thinks they can improve the audio quality measurably if they rewrite the codecs and improve it just with an update. So I think he mentioned that coming this year at some point. Also, speaking of music, he's sounds like he's not too happy with the streaming service in the car because he listens to music a lot. And what is it? Slacker? Is that what we have in this? Is it Slacker Radio? Anyway, he doesn't really like the algorithms, and I don't really actually either. It's not a great selection when you just use the radio playlists. So don't know what's on the horizon, but he said there's going to be improvements in the playlists and the algorithms for your music, so you'll actually be listening to music you like more. So that's cool. And then lastly, he mentioned urban superchargers because somebody had tweeted a question about being able to charge when a lot of people, particularly millennials, don't own houses. They live in apartment communities or something. So he said the urban charging centers that they're going to be building will be superchargers, but they won't be as high powered as the ones strategically placed for long distance charging, and that they also have to build into these areas load leveling, because if everybody charges their car at once at night or something, you can that energy demand is enormous, and so they need to be able to level it so you don't have to build, so the utility wouldn't have to build like new substations to facilitate that. So basically he's saying that's a problem that they're working on. So that's it. That's my summary. Again, the video is available if you want to watch it and see if there's anything else to be gleaned. I think the most interesting things were about Tesla Semi and Model Y. Model Y keeps coming up in conversation, and now all of a sudden we have a silhouette. I really thought they were pushing that vehicle off a little bit longer, but not so. Apparently they've chosen that in front of the pickup. So unless they're going to be revealing the pickup at the Tesla Semi, which reminds me, when I listened to the Q2 earnings call, which was like a couple weeks ago, Musk mentioned the reason that they sort of started developing the Tesla Semi first. So first of all, they started going into the freight hauling area because semis use so much diesel fuel, fossil fuel, relative to cars, that you can reduce the amount of emissions per vehicle way more if you replace a semi's diesel engine with a battery operated vehicle. You'd have to like have a bunch of people switch to Tesla, whereas just replacing one truck. And then they realize, well, the ultimate in power and demonstration of what a truck can do is a semi. And so kind of like where they started with the Roadster, which was like a kind of a showstopper powerhouse for the time anyway, and then they moved down to a sedan and then the X. They're kind of doing that in the truck realm, where they're starting with the powerhouse, which is the Semi, and it's actually using a bunch of Model 3 motors. Apparently, I don't know if maybe it's going to have like 3-4 motors or something like that. Anyway, so they're basically they're conquering the top of the mountain, and then they're going to take that when they develop a pickup truck. And relative to a semi, the power needs of a pickup are smaller, still significant but smaller. So it'll be like going to a simpler project. So it kind of makes sense from that standpoint. I was kind of wondering why they did that, because there's a lot more pickups on the road than there are semis, so why not get into that segment as soon as possible? Because the pickup truck and large people haulers like Suburbans and stuff like that, there's a great need for affordable electric versions of those vehicles, I think. So it's I'll be interested. They're already planning on getting in the pickups. Nobody really has an electric solution for something like a Suburban or the Ford Excursion, large people capacity vehicles. I hope those come sometime in the future. But anyway, that's a different discussion. This Tesla Semi stuff just reminded me of some of the stuff he had said during the Q2 earnings call, which is also available on the ir.teslamotors.com website. You can hear the previous earnings calls, and it's very interesting because they sort of summarize how they see things going, and then the large corporate investors call and ask questions, and they're always, especially Adam Jonas, is always trying to tease out future stuff. He was really big last year asking about Tesla. He used to call it Tesla mobility, what Musk actually calls the Tesla network, I think. Sharing network? I can't remember now. Anyway, all right, that's it. Lots of stuff to comment about and talk about. If you have something to add to that, or that I don't know, maybe I missed something or said something wrong, please add a comment. There's also a like button, and I'll see you in the next video.